fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Christopher Hope and this is GBN Tonight. Are we seeing the government starting to get to grips with record net migration? The figures today offer a mixed picture. Down on last year, but more than double 2019 levels. Just yesterday, Vet Cooper, the Home Secretary, vowed to deport more illegal migrants. So far, so good, but today it has emerged that Labour could grant free movement to EU nationals if they're under the age of 30. Is this the beginning of an agenda to bring the UK closer to the European Union? And I sat down with Tory leadership hopeful Tom Tugendhat to discuss why it's time for the Tories to be honest about their failure on controlling net migration. And smile, you're on camera. Do you mind being filmed when you're going shopping? Retailers are increasingly installing facial recognition to log your identity. It might make you think twice before turning up at Tesco's in your paisley pyjamas. All of that to come. Get in touch with your thoughts on that by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Cameron Walker.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening. It's 1 minute past 7. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. And some breaking news to bring you now. 2 people have been injured after a stabbing at the Chessington Worlds of Adventures theme park near London, with one taken to a major trauma centre. Police were called just after 2:30 this afternoon and found a man in a car park with knife wounds and another found on a nearby road with minor injuries. A third man has been arrested on suspicion of grievous bodily harm, and police believe that all of the men are known to each other. Nobody else is thought to be involved. Figures shown to GB News revealed that the number of visas issued to work dependents was down 50% between April and June this year compared to the previous 3 months. 35,603 work-dependent visas were handed out in the last quarter compared to 71,583 between January and March of this year. That's a fall of over 35,000. A Romanian court has decided internet personality Andrew Tate should be placed under house arrest. Prosecutors have requested that Tate be detained for 30 more days after he was among 6 people taken into custody in an investigation into human trafficking and sexual exploitation. A senior Labour MP is demanding the government answers why a convicted killer of a Newcastle teenager is being released early. Gordon Galtz was 14 when he died in hospital 6 days after he was attacked with a blade in Elswick in November 2022. Lawson Natey was sentenced to 2 years, 8 months for manslaughter and unlawful wounding, but is due to be released after serving just 40% of his jail term. The government plans to release some prisoners, including Natey, early to free up prison capacity, but the Newcastle MP, Chi Onwurah, wants an explanation from the Ministry of Justice. The BBC presenter and ex-footballer Jenas has been sacked even for presenting the One Show and Match of the Day after alleged complaints about his behaviour. Jenas was reportedly removed from the primetime BBC One programmes following an internal investigation by the corporation. A BBC spokesperson said, "We can confirm that he is no longer part of our presenting lineup." Meanwhile, his agents MC Saatchi, no longer represents him. A drug found to slow down Alzheimer's has been given the green light for use in Britain, but it may not be rolled out on the NHS because it costs too much. The charity Alzheimer's Research UK has urged the Health Secretary to step in, warning it would only be available to those who could pay privately. The National Institutes for Health and Care Excellence, which provides national health advice, says the benefits are too small to justify the costs. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Karen Walker. Now it's back to Chris.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Now, just before the start of the show, last night we brought you the story of Dion, a mother who found out her son's killer, or someone involved in the killing of her son, will be released early from prison under Labour's prison release scheme. Here's a reminder of last night's interview. Natty was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in prison, and Dion Barrett was left in shock when she received a letter dated the 1st of August, a couple of weeks ago, warning of his early release.
His family only live 5 minutes away from me. Is he going to come back to Newcastle? Are we going to cross each other in the street? And do I think he's going to do it again? Yes, I do. He's showed no remorse whatsoever. After he's killed Gordon, he's then threatened to petrol bomb my house, to rape Gordon's 13-year-old girlfriend, and he's allowed to come back on the street. He's a danger to the public.
In the murder is probably...
Now, Dion then mentioned that she hadn't heard back from her local MP, Chion Wurra, on that matter after writing to her. We've been in touch with Chi, and she's told GB News the fatal stabbing of Gordon Galt was an appalling crime, and my heart goes out to his mother after her unimaginable loss and continued search for justice. I want to thank GB News for putting us in touch. I raised the case with the Ministry of Justice 2 weeks ago based on press reports of Natty's release, and I've been trying to contact Ms Barrett to see how I can support her further. I am urgently seeking an explanation from the Ministry of Justice about this case and also how we can better support victims' families through this process, including what steps the probation service will be taking to monitor people released on licence. Now, we'd be really grateful to hear here at GB News from you further on this. Are you a victim of crime, or do you know someone who's received a letter from the probation service in recent weeks notifying them about the early release of a prisoner? Please contact us on Farage at gbnews.com. It's a mixed picture coming from today's statistics. Across the board, from work, healthcare and study visas, as well as the regular arrivals, have been falls in the previous year in the 12 months ending June 2024. This was broadly expected. However, a story you may have missed earlier today amongst the visitor figures is this. Reports suggest that ministers are preparing to allow young Europeans to come and live and work in Britain as part of a wider reset of relations with Brussels after Brexit. The move could see EU nationals under the age of 30 being allowed to live and work in the UK for up to 3 years, with a reciprocal arrangement for UK citizens. Although the government denies this only a month ago, Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed that work has been underway to strengthen the ties with the EU. But is this a partial reversal of Brexit? Joining me now here in the studio is Dame Andrea Jenkins, former Tory MP and a former Tory minister, and Stephen Pound, the former Labour MP and also a former minister. To you first, Steve Pound, will companies welcome more under-30s coming over here from the EU?
I'm damn sure they will, particularly in the hospitality business. I mean, I think one of the good things about, there were a lot of good things about the EU, is the fact that people under the age of 30 could work, not just a gap year. We're talking about people actually going to work for a couple of years, in Germany or France or Italy. And the other way around, you saw a lot of people working in our restaurants and cafes. However, can I just debunk the conspiracy theorists? There is in no way is this a cunning backdoor way to re-enter the European Union.
No way? How do you know
that? Because I've listened to Keir Starmer time and time again saying we respect the wishes of 51% of the British population.
He wants a closer deal with Europe, jolly well, and that might mean any number of things.
Joppa, what it does mean, I hope, is that it means that we can actually work with the French on stopping the migrants coming over. We need to actually get on with our biggest neighbours. We need to get on with the French. We're not going to get into bed with them, but we do need to get on with them.
Dame Andrea Jenkins, is this a betrayal or the beginning of a betrayal of Brexit if they go ahead with a plan for the under-30s?
It certainly is. Look,
no.
I like you, Stephen, but the fact that you believe what Keir Starmer's saying, I certainly don't. He's always wanted to go back into the EU, and it will use SIs, statutory instruments, will use whatever measures possible to go in through the back door. And what we'll see as well, Chris, is that because there's a major youth unemployment problem in Europe, people are going to flock here.
Stephen, are you relaxed about that?
Well, the difficult thing is it's impossible to hate Andrea Jenkins, and I've tried.
No one hates anyone on this show.
But it doesn't. But look, I have to say that there are certain people who see everything through the prism of June 2016. This is not about Brexit. This is about being adult and grown up and getting on with our neighbours. And as far as I'm concerned, if I can have somebody down the spoons who speaks Italian, all well and good, as long as we have somebody in Italy who speaks Northolt.
It's Brexit by the back door, and it's having control over our borders. And if this but the people have voted in a government that a Labour Party, which people know have been relaxed about Brexit in the past, have wanted to rejoin. In fact, Sir Keir Starmer wanted a second referendum. Yes. So perhaps that's what it is. I mean, Brexit is about giving control to politicians, and if those politicians choose to do tighter alliances, that's OK too, maybe.
I mean, I disagree completely, Chris, because let's face it, you know, I mean, I was one who fought for Brexit in Parliament, and my constituency has now actually got a Remainer MP who wanted a second referendum, but it's low turnout across the country. We saw that Reform split the vote as well. A lot of people stayed at home. So I think Labour did get in really by default. If you look at the percentage...
As long as you don't touch, as long as sovereignty stays sacrosanct, can't you do these deals in Brexit land?
You've got to ask yourself a pretty basic question. What would reversing Brexit mean? It wouldn't just be about passports. It would be about 2,500 pieces of legislation that we have dumped since we left the European Union. It would mean an immense reset of all our judicial and economic systems and structures. It ain't going to happen. We've gone too far down the road. Just imagine for a second if Keir Starmer used his majority in the House of Commons and said, oh, by the way, we're going back into Europe. Reform would sweep the nation.
He wouldn't be so blatantly honest as that, I'm afraid, Stephen. And also, there's the other issues. If people are coming over for, this is saying, 3 years on a visa under 30s, if they have a relationship with a Brit, then they're going to apply to the ECHR.
No, that's been specifically ruled out. There is no extension of these.
But they then go to the ECHR saying that they need to stay here for family reasons?
The government says they've got no plans for this, I should say.
Oh, no, but they always say no plans, don't they?
You're both politicians, you know what that means.
How can I
going to do it?
I mean, I've got the leader of the Labour Party saying over and over again, read my lips, it ain't going to happen. And you're saying, I don't believe a word he says. Well, I'm sorry.
Who's to blame here? OK. This is all about next year's renegotiation of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, isn't it? There's trade-offs to be made on freedom of movement over access for other parts. And is it a price worth paying to allow young ones to come here from the EU to get better access, maybe for food, medical supplies, veterinary supplies? Is that not a trade-off to be done?
I mean, the thing for me, it's not about Europe, it's about global Britain. And that's why I voted to leave. And I would like to see, you know, our British people have great opportunities globally. It's not just about Europe for me.
But the other thing is, you've got to realise the European Union is not what it was in June 2016. It is now fracturing. If you look at Hungary, you look at Poland, look at Slovenia, Slovakia, there are countries in the European Union which are in the departure lounge.
Yes.
So this is no way that whether the ethos in the rest of Europe is talking about actually leaving.
But won't Keir Starmer want to use Britain as an example? Oh, look. We're going back into it. I
don't think he's going to do Viktor Orban any favours.
But these numbers, though, even looking at today's numbers, you know, 286,000 visas granted to applicants in the year to June 2024. That was on your watch, your Tory government's watch. So even without doing a deal on the EU under 30s, we still have hundreds of thousands of people arriving here.
And it's illegal migration, which we really need to get on. But my point is
Brexit isn't touched by that. Brexit still exists as a state.
Yes.
What's happening here is politicians are allowing this to happen, and your party was voted out, for good or bad, and a new lot come in. That's how democracy works.
No, that's how democracy works, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to fight for Brexit that I fought for in 2016. Yes, I will continue to fight.
But the really important thing here, and you and I both been MPs for a fairly long time, we both had a lot of casework, and we all know the cases where people would come here from Bangladesh or the Philippines, come to work in the care sector. Next thing, they want to bring mum, dad, brother, son, sister, uncle. And I had cases where somebody was working in a care home and they brought in 27 relatives. Now, fortunately, the previous government, in a rare moment of sanity, actually raised the threshold for the income. So you've got to earn £28,000, which pretty much cut those people out. But we've actually stopped those additional visas, and quite right, too.
But the issue is as well, though, Stephen, I mean, he's done away with the Rwanda policy, but there's no strong measures in place to actually prevent people coming over. So we're going to actually get a lot more illegal migrants coming, as we've been seeing the last few weeks.
Well, Stephen Pound, Andrew's got a point, hasn't she? There's no new border command set up. So you got rid of Rwanda, the flights are going to take off about now, probably, if the Tories have won the election. That hasn't happened.
Rwanda was a gimmick, we know. I think there's one person...
We don't know that.
There's one person sitting on a veranda out there in Kigali, sipping a gin and tonic, you know, one person.
A couple of people went there.
But all we needed was a few flies, and that sends a message out there, Stephen. But there's nothing.
And it was working. It was working anecdotally, wasn't it?
Can I just say, what really, really matters when it comes to immigration is the fact that there are currently today 100,000 undocumented illegal immigrants or asylum seekers in this country. 100,000. What we're talking about, what Yvette Cooper's talking about, is actually getting to grip with documenting. Some of those people, we're not going to be able to send them back to Kabul or Kandahar, but let's get them working, check them out first, make sure they're not wrong.
We certainly shouldn't be putting them in hotels, should we? I was quite outspoken against my own government.
And that's exactly what Yvette Cooper's doing. She's reopened the 2 major RAF bases.
Is it time they should be able to work while they're waiting to be processed? They can't work at the moment.
I don't think so, because that encourages the process to slow down. Well, if somebody can't work, I mean, the downside is that you're then dependent on what they call recourse to public funds.
Yes.
The upside is that they actually want to push. But don't forget, a lot of those people will never get asylum in this country because they are people who've been killers, they've been working for the Taliban, and I'm afraid
they're going to go... Starmer, didn't he defend people like this? Well, he defended terrorists, and we couldn't,
sorry, when people came to your surgery, you never said, oh, by the way, I don't agree with you, I'm not going to represent you. I'm sorry, that's what an MP and a barrister is the same thing.
Do you think the economy needs more under-30s in it? I mean, you know about pubs and restaurants, they need more staff, they can't get staff. Is that what the story's about here? Because companies could welcome it, Andrea Jenkins.
No, I'm sure some companies do welcome it. And I know in the NHS there's certainly a skills gap at the moment. And until more people are trained up, you need to plug the gap. So I am pragmatic where that's concerned. But I am seriously worried about Starmer's intention on this.
Why do you think this matters so much, freedom of movement, immigration? It's the top level. We're overwhelmed in our inboxes here at GB News about this. It's all people seem to care about.
As an MP, as a former MP, my post box, even though I was not near the coast, was about the small boats, Chris.
Yeah.
People care about.
Is it a fairness thing? Is that what
it is a fairness thing, because why should taxpayers' money be put on putting people in hotels. And helping them to live when British people are struggling with high energy bills,
the Tories did that, by the way. I've got to say, it's your government did it. I'm sorry to say that too. I know you were there.
Do you remember my debate I had in Parliament? 4 MPs turned up to my debate.
Don't forget, that was one of the sparks for South.
Does your government get the issue of immigration? Absolutely. I mean, we saw during those dreadful riots, but it's all a far-right issue. We'll knock it away. But our viewers and listeners, they say it's not a far-right issue to be worried about immigration.
Chris, look, can I just say, one of the first lessons in politics is you've got to learn to add up. If you look, there are nearly 100 seats where Reform are behind the Labour Party.
Yeah.
All they
second
need is
to the Labour Party.
Second, sorry. It's second to the Labour Party. All it needs is a little twitch of the dial, and we get wiped out. Yes. You know, we're not stupid. We can add up. But above all, it's a question of fairness. Look, we cannot have 100,000 people swilling around in this country being undocumented, not working, just a drag on the nation. Let's get them documented. Let's get them sorted out. Get them sent back if they've got to go back to Albania. Let's get them sent down the job centre.
Do you want to hear more from the Labour government on understanding the concerns about immigration?
Well, I'm hearing that from Yvette Cooper.
Are you hearing that?
Yeah.
But how are you going to get the documents as well?
Because we've just taken on an extra... Oh, sorry, I beg
No, but how are you going to get their documents? You know, they could say they're from anywhere, couldn't they?
A, because we fingerprint people on the point of arrival, and B, and this, I have to say, may set the cat among the pigeons, but what about ID cards?
Oh, we're going to a break now, but I can't believe you've dropped that bombshell as we go to it. Steve Pound.
That's a mic drop.
Andrea Jenkins on that bombshell. ID cards, a whole other programme. Coming up, the man who could be the next Tory leader, Tom Tugendhat, has said sorry. But what for? Back in a jiffy.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
A new exhibition at Gainsborough's house in Sudbury in Suffolk is the first to chart the artistic careers of Cedric Morris, who lived from 1889 to 1982, and Arthur Haynes, who lived from 1894 to 1978. They were partners in love and art for 60 years. I'm joined now by the exhibition curator, Dr. Pat Hardy. Some people will not be in the least bit familiar with these two British artists. So do you want to say a word of background about Cedric Morris and Arthur Haynes?
About 100 artworks were left in 2017 of Cedric Morris's works, and it was felt then that an exhibition to showcase that work would be very appealing to the public. Morris's flower paintings have had a lot of traction. They've become very popular commercially, and there's been more research done on them. So it was felt that it would be good to broaden out the flower painter aspects of Morris's work to showcase the portraits and the landscapes and protest paintings, which we now had in the collection. And it was also thought important that his partner, as you mentioned, for 60 years, Let Haynes, was also given some profile because he very much fell away into the shadows because he was promoting Morris's work and running the school, which was set up nearby, near Sudbury, near Gainsborough's house at Hadley, which was a very different type of art school. And a lot of people, both artists and locals, do remember it having been in operation and how wild it was and how bohemian they were. So it's felt to be a good story in personal terms, but also artistically, to try and place these two, particularly Morris, in the 20th century art world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now the Tory leadership contest grinds on. This week I spoke to another of the contenders, Tom Tugendhat, for my podcast, Chopper's Political Podcast. And he did say something quite interesting that not even Dame Priti Patel could say. On my podcast last week, Dame Priti didn't apologise for net migration, but this time Tom Tugendhat did. He apologised for the huge numbers of migrants arriving here illegally, crossing the Channel and entering here on the Tory government's watch. Let's have a look, and if you're listening on the radio, let's listen to what Tom Tugendhat had to say.
On immigration, how do we finally, once and for all, deal with this issue of big net immigration? Would you like to apologise for seeing those big numbers come to the door?
Look, absolutely. And, we've all got to stand on our record.
Was it wrong, then, to allow, 1.2 million to arrive in 2 years legally?
No question. Absolutely no question about it. Because what we've got to do is we've got to make sure immigration is at a level that the British people and British society...
And what's your level?
...can integrate. Well, look, I'm interested in the levels that we saw between 1990 and sort of 2010. And
what is that?
It was about 100,000, roughly, 120. I mean, there isn't an exact number because it's going to depend on what you need.
But it's tens of thousands, isn't it?
But look, that's the ballpark figure we're looking at, right? That's the sort of area you're thinking of.
That apology would wipe the slate clean for a lot of the Tory voters, I think, because it has driven voters towards reform, which offer easy solutions like one in, one out.
But, Chris, you will forgive me. I mean, I apologise. I mean, and I'm completely clear about it. And the reason I apologise is because we can see the effects, right? We can see the effects in communities across the United Kingdom. But this isn't just about pointing at the problem. It's about fixing it. Indeed. And that's why what we really need is a massive economic change, because we need Brits to be taking the jobs that we are talking about. Now, that means changing the way we pay, changing the way we invest, and actually changing the British economy. Because, frankly, at the moment, it's not delivering properly.
Not the first man is.
Joining me now is Dame Andrea Jenkins, a former Tory MP and former Tory minister, and Stephen Pound, the former Labour MP and also a former Labour minister. Dame Andrea, to you first. It's hard saying sorry in politics. Tom Tugendhat said sorry about something.
Not really. Seeing that other people have been interviewed by you, so he's learning by them not saying sorry.
Priti Patel wouldn't say sorry for that very question. She wouldn't apologise for net migration being record levels.
No, but, I mean, well, good on Tom doing that, but I still don't think he's going to win. I just can't see members voting for him, actually.
No, what do you think, Steve Pound? I mean, there's a bit of a rare candour there from someone who wants to be the next Tory leader, maybe Prime Minister.
Sorry seems to be the hardest word, doesn't it, in politics? You don't say that because it normally admits guilt. I think what he's done is he's acknowledged the reality of it. And if it's on a personal level, he's apologising. He's done that for one reason and one reason only, to distance himself from that policy.
Yes,
so he's going to say, look, that was them. This is me. I've apologised. I've drawn a line.
He's moved on.
Of course, that's a
I think you're right, actually.
It's a very well-known political... we've all been there at some stage. Your predecessor's done some appalling things, and you just say, oh, no, I do acknowledge...
Is he pitching to the right here?
Of course he is.
Because he's not trusted by the right. I mean, you're a right-wing, former right-wing Tory MP. Would you vote for him if you had a chance to vote amongst the MPs? No?
In one iota, no.
Not at all?
In a million years.
Because?
Well, I mean, Tom is a lovely guy, but is not my style of politics, I'm afraid. And is he
what policies put you off?
Well, is he going to stand up to the civil servants? I don't think he will. Will he actually be quite radical and out-the-box thinking to control this illegal migration? No, it'll be just Mr. Safe Pair of Hands, but we don't want that. We need someone to blow the door off to actually get the trust of the British public.
I told you. But I mean, what's interesting, he comes from sort of the David Cameron school of Tory politics. I think his father was the MP for the cities of London and Westminster. You know, he comes from a very, very
steeped in the Tory family.
Steeped in that, you know, absolutely marinated in the Tory tradition. You know, and there's a certain thing where they do feel, A, that they have the right to rule, and B, there's a kind of liberal consensus, which is very strange thing to say.
And you see that in Tom Tugendhat, do you?
I see it very much. I saw it very much in David Cameron, very much, and I see the same thing in Tom Tugendhat.
So he's an heir to Rishi or an heir to Cameron. Is that the problem?
I think so, but I don't believe is actually going to be in a. I do think that.
He also talked.
I don't think he'll be in the final two, if I'm honest.
OK, but let's take it on his own terms. He might be. Tom Tugendhat also in an interview available on podcast platforms overnight and tomorrow morning. He talked about the choices made by the Labour government to pay billions more to public sector workers and then to take away the winter fuel allowance from millions of pensioners. Does that make you uneasy, Stephen Pound?
Not really, because he's just downloading the last newspaper headlines for the last 6 weeks, so there's nothing original.
But he's not wrong about it. Yeah, that's the point.
Do you agree with removing the winter fuel allowance, yet given all this big public sector
hang on just a second. You know, I lose the winter fuel allowance, and believe you me, I am delighted to see that 200 quid go out the door if it's going to go to the National Health Service, to policing the prisons.
It goes into the pot for spending, not necessarily. It's not even ring-fenced.
Look where the money is actually needed, in the police, prisons and the armed forces. I am more than pleased.
It's actually needed with our pensioners.
Andrew, the fact that the King got 300 quid a year is ludicrous.
Are you saying it's patriotic not to worry about it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Goodness me.
Ask not what you can do for your
breaking news. Do you hear that? Is it patriotic? Not to mind about it?
My email address is still open as we do a handover. And, God, I'm inundated still, Chris, with pensioners worried.
Yeah.
I mean, look, doing it at a time when energy prices are so high, it's crazy.
And forecasting up by £147 this winter. I think the Ofgem price cap is set maybe as soon as tomorrow for this winter. Is there a choice being made here by Labour?
Yeah,
it looks like
15% pay increase for trade union workers.
22% for junior doctors, 5.5% for public sector workers.
Because they are their paymasters, aren't they? Let's not forget this.
But don't forget, there's a thing called the warm home discount. Warm home discount, which actually runs from October to April, where people can get 150 quid in addition to all these benefits. And do you know, hardly anybody claims it.
Well, I think a third don't, and 800,000 don't claim that.
Because it's getting the £200.
So, you know, GBNews has got a big reach. It's got a big footprint in the nation. Tell people to claim the winter homes discount. It's there on the government website. Grab it, take it. If you're so Barasic, take your 150 quid.
Why don't they all write to Keir Starmer and say we want our £200 back?
I'm going to ask you,
Andrew, they're doing that anyway.
I'm going to ask you who you would vote for if you had a chance at the MP level of voting.
Yes, Pretty.
Priti Patel.
I mean, Priti's been a good friend for many years, so I'm not voting for that reason. But she's the one with conviction. If you look at everybody, look at her voting record. You know, she is a fellow Spartan as well.
That means voted against Theresa May's deal.
Yes, absolutely.
Through 3 iterations back in 20...
And she was loyal to Boris. She wasn't a backstabber.
It's a fairly low bar.
But she won't say sorry for net migration, and then you'll still vote for her. Interesting.
Yeah, but I know
that
out of everybody, I think she can do the best
Before we go, I've got to ask you both, did you ever say sorry for anything when you're politicians?
I used to say sorry for getting out of bed in the morning.
OK, apart from getting out of bed in the morning, Steve Pound, for actual things.
Yes, I did. And
what was? Give an example.
April 2003, sorry, St Patrick's Day 2003, when I voted for the Iraq War. Yeah. And that will haunt me till the day I die. The day I died, March the 18th, the day after St Pat's Day, and I voted for that. And I voted for I thought was the right reason. Yes. It was a catastrophic mistake which has tainted and stained the reputation of who I think was a decent Prime Minister, Tony Blair.
It really did. Now, Andrew Jenkins, a quick question to you. Do you ever say sorry? On anything?
On anything.
Being a politician?
Being a politician, if I feel I've done something wrong.
Well, did you say it? Have you ever done it? I mean, Stephen Pound remembers it vividly.
Oh, maybe I haven't then.
Perhaps you haven't. There we are.
Maybe I'm a typical politician then.
OK, no,
you're perfect.
Stephen Pound, Andrew Jenkins, thank you on that note. Apologetic note. Thank you for talking about that. Coming up next, the latest scandal to engulf the BBC. And could members finally get a say over who leads Nigel Farage's Reform UK party? Don't go away.
Good evening. Here's your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Storm Lillian is knocking on the door and it's going to bring some unseasonably wet and windy weather to many parts, but particularly in the north as we go through the rest of today, overnight into tomorrow. There is a system that's coming in from the west and it's this that is Storm Lillian, already bringing some very wet weather across Northern Ireland this evening, and that heavy rain and the strong winds will feed into parts of Scotland, England and Wales as we go overnight. The highest rainfall totals likely to be across parts of southwest Scotland, also some eastern coastal parts where a bit of flooding and some disruption quite likely. The wind, the rain, the cloud will keep temperatures up, so a relatively warm but very wet and windy start to the day for many of us on Friday. As we go through Friday itself then, yes, it is going to be a wet start across eastern parts of Scotland in particular, but towards the west here there will be some hefty showers following in behind the persistent rain. Showers also for Northern Ireland. Meanwhile, for Northern England there will be some heavy rain around, but it's the winds that are causing the greatest concern. We're likely to see gusts of around 65 to 75 miles per hour in the most exposed spots, perhaps even a little bit stronger than that as a small core of very strong winds pushes through during tomorrow morning. Further south there will be some rain to start off with, but that should clear away towards the east as we head towards lunchtime, and actually the whole system that is Storm Lillian clears away towards the North Sea, and so for much of England and Wales it's going to be a largely bright sunny afternoon with temperatures a touch higher than today. Further north temperatures a little bit lower, but there will also be a scattering of showers and some of these could be quite heavy. Looking ahead to the long weekend, and watch out for some heavy rain towards the southeast on Saturday. Elsewhere quite a few showers to watch out for, but that rain in the southeast does clear away, and then for quite a few places Sunday is looking a little bit drier, albeit some heavy rain crossing northern parts, and then more wet weather could push through in from the west on Monday, but it should be a mostly dry start. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, former Premier League footballer Jermaine Jenas, who hosts the BBC's One Show, has left the corporation due to allegations of inappropriate behaviour. In what's been described as a massive shock to colleagues there who've been kept in the dark, the presenter has been axed with immediate effect. He had previously been endorsed by Gary Lineker, the Match of the Day commentator and presenter, as his natural successor on that programme. And this week's marks that show's 60th anniversary. And Jermaine Jenas had admitted it was a dream of his to present the show. Is this another crisis about the personal behaviour of BBC presenters? Joining me now to discuss this is former BBC Home Affairs correspondent Danny Shaw. Danny, welcome to GBN Tonight. Why is it the BBC have to have these problems every so often?
Well, it's very unfortunate that the BBC does seem to have had a string of problems in the last few months, from the Strictly Come Dancing allegations to the Hugh Edwards criminal charges, which resulted in his conviction, and now the allegations against Jermaine Jenas, which have resulted in him being sacked from the BBC. It's very unfortunate. I think in any large corporation or organisation where you've got 20,000 employees, you're going to get issues from time to time. But the fact that you've got three sort of high-profile figures or programmes being subject to complaints, allegations, and so on, which have resulted in huge controversy, does not reflect very well on the corporation.
It might be, Danny Shaw, the BBC's acting quickly after not acting quickly over Hugh Edwards, of course, in that situation. I think the corporation knew that he had been charged, but not the full nature of the allegations for several months, and he's on full pay suspended.
Well, look, we don't know the precise nature of the allegations in this case, and it would be unwise to speculate about that. But from my experience at the BBC, and I was there as an employee for 31 years, from my experience, they tend to take quite a long time after they've received allegations or after they've received complaints. There's a process that has to be gone through, a quite exhaustive internal process. I know certainly of cases which have taken a long time to resolve. It appears that this case has been dealt with quite rapidly from the reports that have emerged within a few weeks or a month. And it was only a month ago that Jenas was on air presenting the One Show, and then shortly before that he was on the BBC at the Euros being a pundit. So it appears as though the BBC has acted quite quickly. In my experience, if someone's sacked from the BBC, it's normally for something quite serious. So about that.
And there's no suggestion this is anywhere near the gravity of the Hugh Edwards situation, of course. Now, we should say that Jenas has said tonight that right now I can't talk about it. I can tell you I'm not happy. There are two sides to every story, Jenas says. I'm going to be speaking with my lawyers on the issue. So again, it was not really clear why they're parted ways, but yeah, it is yet again issues for the BBC. Do you think, have you seen when your time in there, were things covered up in the past and now they're not being covered up? I mean, is the corporation more sensitive to being seen to act quickly? What do you think, is that, Danny?
I think any big high-profile organisations, Chris, and this is the public sector, we've seen it with the scandal at the post office, and we've seen it with other organisations in the private sector as well. Any big organisation has a reputation to protect. And, you know, I've seen examples before when the BBC sort of circles the wagons and to try to protect its reputation. That is one issue. I think there is another issue, and this is nothing to do with the Jenas affair. This is something that I've observed from before that. It has an issue with presenters, celebrities, you know, correspondents that it sort of puts on a pedestal and pays huge amounts of money, 100, 200, 300, 400,000 pounds. And that creates, I think, some cultural issues in the organisation. It puts these people on too big a pedestal, and that creates a distance between them and some of the other members of staff. And I think what is needed is a reset to understand, so that everyone understands what's expected of them if they're one of these sort of high-profile individuals that's paid a huge amount of money, the standards that are expected, and also to make it clear to other staff that they can raise complaints about people no matter how powerful or no matter how high-profile. That is a general comment that I will make before the events emerge today.
That's quite right. Well, Danny Shaw, former BBC Home Affairs correspondent, thank you for joining us tonight on GBN Tonight. Thank you very much. Now, the election might be just 6 weeks ago. Blimey, what a long 6 weeks that's been. But the Reform UK Party is busy planning for the next one in 4 or 5 years' time. This will involve a new constitution for this young party, which will let its members have a say over who leads Nigel Farage's party. Earlier today, I spoke to Reform Party Chairman Zia Youssef about how Reform UK is planning to become a party of government.
Look, we of course understand that members need to be given a democratic a set of rights in our constitution. That is what we are working on. You know, that constitution, by the way, Chris, is an incredibly important document. You know, we are chartering a course to be the party of government in this country in 2029. So that document must be fit for purpose today, for the next year, but also for when we're in government. And so we have to get that document right.
And will that document, when we see it, allow members to remove the leader, in this case Nigel Farage? That's what all parties must have, the right for members to remove a leader.
Of course it will.
That was Yusuf there talking to me earlier. Now, joining me today, right now in the studio, is Dame Andrea Jenkins, a former Tory MP and former Minister, and Stephen Pound, the former Labour MP and Minister. Dame Andrea Jenkins, to you first. You've heard there from Zia Yusuf democratising Reform UK. That's surely a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they would go in this route, to be honest, because, I mean, we saw them have 5 seats. No doubt they're going to concentrate on the council elections next year, so they got a lot of criticism for not being very democratic, so I think that's a natural move, actually.
There were suggestions that you may go across to Reform UK before the election.
But I believe in going down fighting, Chris.
You're a fighter, not a quitter. Of course you are.
Yes.
And on your leaflet there on screen now, you're seeing that on your leaflet your photograph with Nigel Farage there, the leader of Reform UK, looking pretty happy with yourself. Did the structure of Reform UK put you off?
No, because I'm a Conservative and I got elected in 2015 as a Conservative and I wanted to fight as a Conservative. You know,
and your future, will you fight as a Reform UK candidate in the future?
I don't even know if I want to go back into politics, to be honest with you, Chris. So, I mean, who knows what the future holds? It's a long way off, isn't it?
Of course, it's 4 or 5 years. Stephen Pound, this is Reform UK growing up as a party.
Absolutely.
It's currently a company with Nigel Farage owning 8 out of the 15 shares in the company. But to try and give members a chance to kick out the leader, that's what should happen.
When Andrew's young son is grown up and he's studying civics or British Constitution, I'll be asked about the 3 most influential politicians of the last 20 or 30 years. Thatcher, Blair, Farage. At the moment, Reform is a one-man band. We've got people like Richard Tice, Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib. There's plenty of other people in Reform, but at the moment it is still perceived as Nigel Farage and the rest of the crew.
Completely.
So what he's done is he's done absolutely the right thing. And I have to say, as a person who's Labour to his bootstraps, I'm not all that happy about it because it means that they're now on the stage as a grown-up. They're on the pitch and they're now playing as a grown-up.
They tell me they're fighting 2,000...
And they are coming after Labour.
Of course they are. They wiped your lot out. I mean,
well, they were second in about 100 seats.
I know.
They're fighting 2,000 seats at the next local election.
Look, the way politics works actually from the bottom up. You can't impose it from the top. We need to get parish councillors, district councillors, county councillors, police and fire commissioners, MPs. It works that way up. And look what the Liberals do. The Liberals have a thing called donutting, which is nothing about Ed Davies scoffing scrap food. It's actually to do with it. They win a council seat and then they target the seats around that and then the seats around that.
Just one question. Will they win the election, by the way, in 28, 29? They think they can.
It's unlikely, but they could.
You heard it here first. Dame Andrea
We've got to unite the right, like I was trying to do before the election, Chris.
Dame Andrea Jenkins and Stephen Pound, thank you again for joining us with that discussion. Now, do you ever get the feeling that you're being watched? Well, some of the UK's biggest retailers, including your local Tesco's, are installing live facial recognition cameras. Later, I'll be speaking to an organisation challenging this surveillance.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said, Storm, you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes. You know the best time to go to a dentist? When? 2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went into Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. I mean, this is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants, things like that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now we've got
that's
it.
when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down, but in many cases they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements. So you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Please, can I have an emergency appointment?" I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected. She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, doesn't it, Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, do you ever feel like you're being watched? Has snooping by CCTV cameras gone too far? Campaign group Big Brother Watch has revealed that not only are police using these cameras, but also major retailers like Sports Direct and B&M have been quietly rolling out facial recognition cameras. Apparently, companies can create face prints of you without you knowing. And now this group, Big Brother Watch, has launched legal action to halt the spread of this technology. I'm very pleased to be joined here in our studio in Westminster by the director of Big Brother Watch, Silky Carlo. Silky, welcome to the show. Great to have you on. Is the problem here that cameras make people feel safe on the one hand, but also there's an issue about what's happening to their images?
Well, they can do until they go wrong, which is now happening a lot. And, you know, obviously, there are things that shops and the police should do about shoplifting. There are proportionate measures that they can take. But we all want to live in a free country as well and be treated with respect. And what we're now seeing is that increasingly big retailers, like you say, Sports Direct, Home Bargains, have these cameras on their doors that are scanning everyone's face as they walk in, like a passport check. And they're making their own blacklists of people that they don't want in the shops. As a result, we're seeing people being misidentified and then publicly humiliated and accused of being shoplifters when they're not shoplifters. And also people wrongly put on watch lists who haven't actually done anything wrong but then can't prove their innocence.
Yes. Sports Direct says to us that they may use these CCTV cameras and facial recognition to monitor and record images for the purpose of security, prevention and detection of crime and health and safety, and store them centrally. And we heard from House of Fraser, Sports Direct. They're also saying that they use this biometric, facial biometric data, so that you have people entering the store can be on a privately created watch list. So it's privately held to keep their stuff safe from shoplifters.
Yes, but this is to protect revenue. It's not to protect the public. There's no police join up at all here. So you can have... It's not really helping to deal with the crime problem that we have because the shops aren't giving these photos to the police. They've just kind of accepted the police probably aren't going to turn up. So we're going to have our own privatised policing system. But then it's justice-free.
So you know of people, do you, wrongly accused of shoplifting?
Yeah. We're now taking legal action on behalf of a number of people. We're being contacted every single week, and if anyone's watching who's been affected in this way, contact us. We can try to help, but it really is difficult because, for example...
So they go into a shop and they're accused of being a shoplifter before they even shop. Is that what happens here?
Yes, it can do. We're, at the moment, helping an older woman who was accused of stealing £1 worth of paracetamol, which she didn't do. We asked, do they have any evidence of this alleged crime? No, of course they don't. But the disturbing thing is, the retailers also share this data. So not only is she now banned from a shop that was
retailer.
publicly humiliated in that shop, but also other shops in the region. So you can be digitally blacklisted from your high street with no justice process.
Is there anything which viewers or listeners can do? I mean, mask up, wear a mask going to a shop? I mean, that might sound a bit crazy, but given the pandemic is quite in recent memory, but what to do?
I mean, I think we need to protect freedom in this country. I think we need to not become a surveillance state. You can't do this in Europe. You don't do it in the US. We are a complete outlier. So I think people can support Big Brother Watch. We're trying to take action to stop this, but also to back the campaign for the government to do something about this. Other countries...
There is a watchdog, isn't there, in government who looks after the use of CCTV cameras?
Yes, hasn't always been the most effective because, I mean, look at the state that we're in. So really we need new government action. They need to ban live facial recognition from our high streets.
And recognise it's a problem here, but it's a civil liberties issue, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about the future and the nature of our country. Do we want to kind of mimic China? Do we want to be a China light? Or do we want to protect freedom and privacy and have people treated with respect?
And the information is held centrally, according to one retailer here. What does that mean? Is it, you say it's passed around amongst a network of shops concerned about shoplifting? That's what... And then... You know, how can someone who's on that list get taken off it if their face shouldn't be there in the first place?
It's very difficult. This is the problem. It's so unregulated. In the case of this older lady that we're helping at the moment, the shops have refused to take her off their list, despite the fact they've got no evidence that she's ever committed any offence whatsoever. And the extent of their allegation is that they lost £1 worth of medicine, which they've got no proof that it happened. So it's really, really balmy, and it has a real impact on people. It's had a big impact on her life, and we are getting contact like this all the time.
These issues of surveillance have fallen down their political agenda. They're a big issue, I think, back in the noughties. But is it the case that there's one CCTV camera for every 11 people in Britain? We are surveilled a lot by shops and the state and other people.
Yes, we're the most surveilled country outside of China. And we have roughly the same proportion of cameras to the population as China.
And why is that a bad thing, though? Because it might make people feel safe.
I don't think many people watching this will say, oh, we're much safer, law-abiding country as a result. And we see often that in the criminal justice system, CCTV is rarely used. I think there could be a place for new technologies, possibly even facial recognition in forensic settings when you're actually targeting suspects of really, really serious crimes. But this is the equivalent of just swabbing everyone's DNA as they enter shops or on the high streets. It's so extreme. We don't see it in the democratic world. And the reason that we're in this situation is because that kind of appetite for freedom and civil liberties has fallen off the political agenda.
Unless you're willing,
so that's why we're here.
That's why you're here. Unless we're vigilant, it can be eaten up, and the state can take over and shops can take over and remove those freedoms that we take for granted.
Yes, I mean, as they say, eternal vigilance is the price you pay.
Would you go shopping in your pyjamas?
I might do.
Being filmed by...
I wouldn't want to be on facial recognition if I did. And I personally, I won't go in shops that use facial recognition. Just as a rule, we have to draw the line somewhere. Yeah. I want to live in a free country. I don't want to live in China.
There we are. Well, listen, Silky Carlo from Big Brother Watch. Great to have you on in the studio. An important issue. We'll hear more from our viewers about that, I'm sure. Now, before I go to Jacob, I want to remind you of Dion Barrett's story I mentioned at the top of the programme. Dion is a mother who received a letter from probation services informing her that one of her sons, or people involved in her son's killing, will be freed under Labour's prisoner release scheme early next month. We'll be so grateful to hear from you on this. Are you a victim? Do you know a family member involved in a victim situation? Or do you know anybody involved in this? Maybe a friend who maybe have heard from the probation service notifying them about the early release scheme of a prisoner. Please do contact us, farage@gbnews.com, and we'll do our best to feature your story. Now, coming up next is State of the Nation, all the way from sunny or maybe rainy Somerset. Jacob, are you there?
I am here, thank you very much. Yes, in glorious sunny Somerset, where if there's rain, it's a figment of the imagination.
What's on your show tonight, Jacob?
What am I going to be talking about? The free movement being brought back by the back door by the Labour government, that they clearly want to cosy up to the EU. They don't dare rejoin because they'd never win, but they want to try and get back in by stealth. possibly even getting Ollie Robbins in as the Cabinet Secretary. And then we see one of the big advantages today in that we're allowed to have an Alzheimer's drug, which the Americans are allowed to have, but the EU won't, because it doesn't like having any risk at all and stops people having potentially life-saving drugs. So it's a real benefit of Brexit that we've seen today. So that's the first subject. And I've got Stanley Johnson with me, who's going to talk to me about all sorts of things, not least going on the Marco Polo Trail and riding on a yak.
That sounds extraordinary. And just on that chat earlier, Jake, you may have heard it. Do you worry about CCTV cameras? I mean, do you ever go to the shops in your paisley pyjamas and get worried of being filmed by people?
No, I wouldn't dream of going outside the house in my pyjamas. I can't think why people want to do that. But then I wouldn't go out of the house without a coat and tie on. I may be rather old-fashioned in this regard, but I'm not therefore too worried if people see me in a coat and tie. But I do worry about the surveillance state. I think it has to be balanced, and we have to remain a free society.
OK, Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you, and good luck with your show tonight. And thank you to everyone for watching and listening all this week when I've been presenting GBN Tonight. Next up, State of the Nation, but first, the weather with Alex Burkill.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Storm Lilian is knocking on the door, and it's going to bring some unseasonably wet and windy weather to many parts, but particularly in the north as we go through the rest of today, overnight into tomorrow. There is a system that's coming in from the west, and it's this that is Storm Lilian, already bringing some very wet weather across Northern Ireland this evening, and that heavy rain and the strong winds will feed into parts of Scotland, England and Wales as we go overnight. The highest rainfall totals likely to be across parts of southwest Scotland, also some eastern coastal parts where a bit of flooding and some disruption quite likely. The wind, the rain, the cloud will keep temperatures up, so a relatively warm but very wet and windy start